So today we are going to take the trigonometric ratios that we talked about in our last lesson, and now we're going to use them to help us find missing sides of a triangle. So for your essential question, I want you to explain how to use the trig ratios to find the missing sides. So just really quickly, I want to take a look at an explore problem. So if we had a triangle, a right triangle, with a side here of 5 and a side here of 8, and we're going to use this angle here as our reference angle, and that's going to be 32 degrees. So with respect to our reference angle, 32 degrees, we are given the side opposite of that angle, and we are given the side adjacent to that angle. So based on what we saw in the previous lesson, we know that the ratio, the trigonometric ratio that we could set up here for opposite and adjacent is going to be tangent, because we know the tangent of an angle is equal to the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. So the tangent, in this case, of 32 degrees is equal to the opposite side 5 divided by the adjacent side, which is 8. So we have this equation here, and we're saying within this equation that the tangent of 32 degrees is equal to 5 over 8. So what I want you guys to do in your calculators, first I want you to make sure that your calculator is in degrees. So if you look at the screen, there are 3 different options that your screen could possibly say. It could say DEG, which is degrees, RAD, which is radians, and GRAD, which is gradians. So we need to make sure first that your calculator is in degrees. So if your screen does not say degrees, please speak with me in one of our meetings so that we can adjust your calculator so it will work. So when you take the tangent of 32 degrees in your calculator, you're going to round that, and you're going to get 0.625. Okay, so the tangent of 32 degrees is equal to 0.625. Well, if you divide 5 by 8 in your calculator, you're also going to get a decimal value of 0.625. So these trigonometric ratios that we set up in our previous lesson are equal to, again, going back to that side ratio, again, that's consistent for all triangles. So every triangle with a 32-degree angle, when you divide the side opposite of that angle by the side adjacent to that angle, is always going to give you 0.625. And so the sine, cosine, and tangent values that we get for each angle measure is going to have a specific value. And we're able to use that value to help us find those missing sides. So let's say we didn't have this piece here. Let's say this was our variable x. What we would be able to do here is set up this equation and then get x by itself by multiplying both sides by 8. So in our calculator, we would multiply 8 times the tangent of 32 degrees to give us that value of x. So that's how we're going to use our trigonometric ratios to help us find missing sides today. So let's go ahead and take a look at our first guided practice problem. So we're finding the value of the variable. In this case, our variable is x. The first thing that we have to do with respect to our reference angle, so in this case, our reference angle is 28 degrees. With respect to this angle, we need to identify the sides that we're given and or looking for. So here we know we're looking for x, and this is the side adjacent to our reference angle. And we're given this side here, 12, which is the hypotenuse of the triangle. So going back to the mnemonic we learned in the previous lesson, we know that it's SO TOA. So given that we have the adjacent side and the hypotenuse, adjacent side and hypotenuse, we're going to use cosine for this problem here to find the value of the missing side. So we set up our equation. The cosine of the angle, our angle here is 28 degrees. Cosine of the angle is equal to the adjacent side, which is x, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 12. So this is the equation that we are going to use to find x, which is that missing side. So to get x by itself, currently it's being divided by 12. So in order to undo division, we're going to multiply, and we're going to multiply both sides by 12 because that is the number we are trying to get rid of. So x is equal to 12 times the cosine of 28 degrees. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you to the next screen. And I want to talk about how to use your calculator. So first thing, if you have this calculator here, the first thing that you have to do is type in your trigonometric function. Now again, going back to the Explorer, you have to make sure first that your calculator is in degrees. Okay, so you can either speak with me during a meeting, or if you Google it, you can see how to put your calculator in degrees if it's not already in degrees. So for this calculator here, what you need to do first is push this cosine button. So cosine of 28 equals, so that value that you get is the cosine of 28 degrees. And when you take the cosine of 28 degrees, you should get a decimal value of 0.8829, etc. From there, you're now going to multiply that number by 12. So times 12 equals, and if we round to the nearest tenth here, you're going to get a value of 10.6. So x is equal to 10.6. For this calculator here, the one in the middle, the first thing that you have to do for this calculator is type in your angle. So we're going to start by pushing 28, and then you push your cosine button. So 28 cosine gives you 0.8829, etc. And then you multiply that number by 12, so push times 12 equals, and again, you should get 10.6 when rounded to the nearest tenth. Lastly, if you have this calculator here, it's very similar to the first one we talked about. First thing you do is push your cosine button. So cosine of 28 equals 0.8829, etc. Then you're going to push times 12 equals, and again, you should get 10.6. So make sure that depending on which calculator you have, that you're typing your numbers in or your buttons in the correct order in order to achieve that correct answer. All right, let's take a look at another guided practice problem. Again, first thing we need to do is take a look at our reference angle, which in this case is 67 degrees. With respect to that angle, we are looking for the opposite side, and we're given the value of the hypotenuse. So if you look at SOHCAHTOA, opposite and hypotenuse is our sine ratio. So the sine of our angle, 67 degrees, is equal to the side opposite, which is y, divided by the hypotenuse, which is 17. To get y by itself, we must multiply both sides by 17. We get y is equal to 17 times the sine of 67 degrees. Now, I want you guys to make sure that you are writing this out like this every single time. I want to see in your work exactly what you are typing into your calculator so that if it's just a calculator error, I'm able to give you the maximum number of points here. So again, in your calculator, go ahead and find the sine of 67 degrees. However you need to type that in, whatever order you need to type that in. The sine of 67 should be 0.9205, etc. Then you will multiply that number by 17. And if we round this to the nearest tenth, that's going to give us 15.6. Starting with our reference angle, in this case is 37. With respect to that angle, we have the side opposite. We're looking for the side opposite, that's our variable, and we're given the side adjacent. Back to our trig ratios, opposite and adjacent is what we use with our tangent function. So the tangent of our angle, which is 37, is equal to the side opposite divided by the side adjacent. To get x by itself, we must multiply both sides by 14. X is equal to 14 times the tangent of 37. So in your calculator, find the tangent of 37 degrees. You should get a decimal value of 0.7535, etc. Multiply that number by 14, and you're going to get a value of 10.5. Okay, so for this one here, same process, starting with our angle, which is 68 degrees. With respect to that angle, we're looking for the side adjacent, and we're given the side opposite. Using the adjacent and opposite sides, that will go along with our tangent function. So the tangent of 68 degrees is equal to the opposite side, 35, divided by the adjacent side, which is x. So notice now our variable is in the denominator. So we can't just divide both sides by 35 because 35 is on top of the x. We have to get that x out of the denominator. So in order for us to get that x out of the denominator, we need to multiply both sides by x. So I'm going to multiply both sides by x, and that's going to give me an equation of x times the tangent of 68 degrees is equal to 35. Still trying to get x by itself, now it's being multiplied to the tangent of 68. So we need to get rid of the tangent of 68. So we will divide both sides by the tangent of 68 degrees. So that gives me x is equal to 35 divided by the tangent of 68 degrees. Now again, I want you guys to make sure that you're writing this out in your work so that I see exactly what you are typing into your calculator. Now this one gets a little bit trickier than the ones we saw previous to this. So in your calculator, you're going to do 35 divided by, now again, depending on which calculator you have, you're either going to type your angle in first or your function button in first, but you need to take the tangent of 68 degrees, whatever that order is. So 35, push the divided by button, and then the tangent of 68 degrees. Now make sure you hit equals, and you should get a measure of 14.1. Now, if you have questions about how to type this into your calculator, please make sure you flag this question and you get that question answered when we meet. Let's take a look at one more before we call it a day. Beginning with our angle 61, we are looking for the hypotenuse, and we are given the side opposite. Opposite and hypotenuse is going to be our sine function. So the sine of 61 degrees is equal to 28 divided by x. We must first get that x out of the denominator, so we're going to multiply both sides by x. That gives us x times the sine of 61 is equal to 28. We then divide both sides by the sine of 61. And we get x is equal to 28 divided by the sine of 61. We then type that into our calculators, 28 divided by the sine of 61 degrees. That gives us a value of 32.0 degrees. Now, this is a rounded value. Even though this is a 0, in our calculator it was 32.01. Whenever you're asked to round to the nearest tenth, you need to make sure that even if it's a 0, there's something in that tenth place. So 32.0 is the value of x. And that is using trig to find missing sides. Don't forget to answer your essential question.